Alright, what's going on, everybody? It's your boy Jobbers and Goons, and today we have another installment in the Star Wars Versus series. This one's a banger of a matchup between two of the most daunting opponents in the mythos. We have, in one corner, Exile Kenobi, who many consider to be prime Obi Wan Kenobi. That is, after Revenge of the Sith and Exile, when he's meditated and become much stronger. And on the other side, we have Dark Empire Luke Skywalker, after the events of Return of the Jedi. This kind of follows him up to when he was working with Palpatine after Palpatine returned, and then eventually defeating Dark Empire Sidious. Now, these two are to clash. Who do I think will win? We will get into this matchup in a bit, but first, make sure to run the likes up. Let's try to get like 100 likes. And we'll be ready for the next installment of Star Wars. As well as check out my second channel, The Coffee Shop, where I will be dropping a Star Wars cosmology video today. But anyways, without further ado, I don't want to waste time. Let's get into the matchup and explain why it's going to be a banger. And without further ado, let's begin. Okay, so before every battle, I kind of give my reason behind the Star Wars matchup before I do it. And my reason for this one is essentially, I kind of view both characters as people aren't really neutral on. You either love them or hate them. You either think Kenobi is one of the greatest Jedi ever, an amazing character with a lot of nuance, who is also a beast in battle, or you think he's trashed, a Gary Sue, and someone you just couldn't really vibe with. On the other hand, same thing goes with Luke. You either love the little farm boy that grew up and righted his father's wrongs to try to save the galaxy multiple times, as well as you might hate him and say, you know, he's another character kind of like Rey. Just handed everything, happens to be strong as shit just because of bloodline. Pretty dumb. So, for me personally, rock with both characters, so I'm not a victim to hating on either. But, regardless, I just think they're both polarizing figures within their own verse. And these are some of their more interesting iterations of each character, as well as perhaps the closest in a matchup between the two. So, I'm going to break it down in three categories. First one being physicals, what they're capable of physically. Second, combat skill and intelligence. And then finally, hacks, abilities, and gear. And then we'll get into who wins. Now, first one to discuss is Exile Kenobi. General Kenobi obviously grew up a Jedi. He was actually a youngling that didn't show that much promise initially. However, Qui-Gon Jinn saw something in this young fella and took him under his wing, making him his apprentice. Eventually, he would go on to become a productive Padawan under Qui-Gon Jinn, growing into a formidable Jedi Master who would slay his first Sith warrior in the name of Darth Maul. At least he thought he slayed him, but for sure dropped him in Phantom Menace, but was unfortunately not able to save his master, Qui-Gon. He would raise the Chosen One, Anakin Skywalker, on the dying wish of his master, and eventually would have to duel this very Chosen One for the fate of the galaxy as Anakin turned to the dark side. After the Jedi Order fell under the powerful Order 66 issued by Darth Sidious, Kenobi defeated his former Padawan turned Darth Vader and left him dying on Mustafar, and went into hiding on the planet of Tatooine, keeping a watchful eye over Luke Skywalker, the son of Anakin, who would grow up to become the next Chosen One. And in doing so, he would pray many nights, meditate in the Force, and every once in a while have a battle, including one-shotting Darth Maul and taking down Asharat Het, disgraced Jedi Master and future Darth Krayt. Now, in terms of physicality, what was Kenobi capable of? Right out the gate as a character, Kenobi, while perhaps not the most physically gifted in being, he's not the fastest, not the strongest, not the quickest, he was always one of the toughest. Kenobi was built to take damage. We've seen him take blasts from flamethrowers, survive massive explosions, get thrown around into Durasteel and have Durasteel massive walkways dropped directly on his skull, according to the novel, in which even Count Dooku was like, dude, how does he survive that? While he is infamous for having not the best force walls as defense, his natural durability makes up for this. We've seen him actually be poisoned and tortured and basically skewered alive for weeks on end, and would break free and immediately go to battle with his captors, showing his resiliency and toughness and insane stamina. Strength-wise, he does grow to be quite formidable as a Jedi with strength, as he can go toe-to-toe with multiple Sith Lords at once. For reference, he held off both Maul and Savage Opress at the same time. In strength, he's gone toe-to-toe with Anakin Skywalker and even knocked him back and damaged him, with Skywalker being mentioned in the Return of the Sith, Revenge of the Sith era as being the most physically gifted Jedi ever up to that point, which is quite the accolade for a character like Anakin, yet Kenobi could go toe-to-toe with him strength and speed-wise. He's also able to keep up with General Grievous, who was stated faster than any Jedi in an encounter with Mace Windu. And being able to keep up with and even disarm him during battle is quite the speed feat. As well as strength-wise, he was able to go toe-to-toe with Grievous, who's also stronger than Jedi, and was able to start tearing open his Durasteel chest, which can stand massive starfire blasts, which is crazy because that can be scaled to like leveling cities and even threatening surface of planets. So overall, physically, while he wasn't the most impressive when he was a youngling, as a Padawan and as he matured, Kenobi became more and more of a physical force, even being noted as a Padawan as he was maturing to getting closer to being as fast as Qui-Gon Jinn himself, and then obviously surpassed him soon after. He's one of the toughest Jedi to ever exist, regardless of era. And taking him down is always going to be a problem because he's not going to get tired, and you basically got to kill him if you want him to stop. So yeah, physically, he might not be the most impressive Jedi ever, but overall, he's one of the most well-rounded physically. Now, for combat skill and intelligence, there's no doubt about it. Kenobi is one of the more elite, skilled, and combative minds in Jedi history. Especially after the Clone Wars, it's hard to deny. So, getting into it, Kenobi first, when he initially got into the Jedi ways, Kenobi first learned Shi-Cho, or Form 1, which is an broadly based fighting style, more acclimated to take on several foes and defend yourself as well as disarm them, not really focused on one-on-one sword combat per se. After getting the basics locked down, he would soon move on to his master, Qui-Gon Jinn's main form, which is Ataru. Ataro is an aggressive acrobatic style. This is mostly based on being quick, aggressive, and acrobatic, flying around the battlefield, taking down your opponent, and overwhelming them. Most famous user is Yoda. Qui-Gon Jinn, while he's accredited as a master of this form, we saw him use a more grounded approach, more so being a bully in the pocket than he was an acrobat. On the other hand, Kenobi did become quite agile as a fighter under the tutelage of Qui-Gon Jinn, and we saw this reflect in his early Ataru days as he was able to take on Xanatos, the disgraced former Jedi, student to Qui-Gon, as well as he later took on Darth Maul, who was able to defeat his master, Qui-Gon Jinn. However, in seeing his master fall under battle with Darth Maul, he felt that the style of Ataru, while yes, it had its perks in being aggressive and violent and agile, it had its flaws defensively. And if you couldn't overwhelm, he felt you kind of left yourself stranded. So, learning from the death of his master, Kenobi would go on to study Form 3 Sarisu, forever changing his fighting style and approach to combat. Kenobi after this became much more measured as a fighter, as Sarisu is a blade style, focused on complete and absolute defense. That is, even the Force is focused into his blade, and essentially overwhelming him as a duelist is damn near impossible. You have to be of the highest degree to even threaten that. Now, With this style, we've seen him comfortably go against Count Dooku. Count Dooku being one of the most esteemed and decorated duelists of all time, and was able to go toe-to-toe with the likes of Yoda. However, Dooku did also note that Kenobi, due to his defensive prowess with Sarisu, was able to so flawlessly flow into this defense that Dooku actually couldn't really move him in a straight-up duel. He was not able to actually knock him off balance due to his grace as a defensive fighter. This is not the only obvious accolade skill-wise for Kenobi. He, even before becoming the ultimate Sarisu Master, had battles against the likes of Savage Opress, who has defeated several Jedi, Darth Maul, who even slayed Jedi Master Qui-Gon Jinn, Asajj Ventress, who had many Jedi deaths to her name, battled the likes of even General Grievous, who has one of the highest Jedi body counts in galactic history, and studied heavily under Count Dooku, battled Dooku several times, and even took on Anakin Skywalker, the Chosen One and Prodigy, in a fateful duel on Mustafar. While he was not better than Anakin as an overall talent with the blade, this kind of blends into his intelligence, right? It was noted that as a big-brained fighter, Kenobi almost is unmatched, and that is one of the big reasons why he was able to defeat someone as strong and talented as Skywalker on Mustafar, because he was able to dog-walk him mentally and understood all of his moves and how to manipulate the battlefield and battle in his favor. His brilliance as a fighter and duelist only got better after his time against Anakin on Mustafar. For example, when he later met up and had to battle Darth Maul, he was able to instantly deduce which style Maul would take and how he would anticipate the moves of Kenobi. Kenobi instantly switched, baited him, and one-tapped him, taking down a Sith Master that, in prior years, would give him fits. We also saw him easily take on Ashrat Het, former Jedi Master, who we saw several years before, so a much weaker Het, easily take on a Clone Wars Anakin, who was a threat to many Jedi killers at the time and was arguably Jedi Master tier as a duelist. Yet Het had no trouble taking care of a enraged Anakin. Now, Kenobi, with all his skill, is complemented again by his intelligence and other martial arts prowess. Now, in terms of intelligence, he was coined with the nickname of the Negotiator in the Clone Wars for good reason, because he was so tactically gifted and astute politically. He knew how to manipulate people and how to get the job done and how to change situations to his favor. Using a mix of precog and actual intelligence and real-world experience, Kenobi was well adept at analyzing situations and figuring out how to take down opponents. He's also one to go for the easiest route possible. For example, he's dispatched easily of Magna Guards before. However, when going against Grievous and knowing he was taking on a very formidable killer, when faced with Magna Guards, instead of meeting them blade to blade like most would, he opted to use the Force and get them out of the way with fallen debris, taking on Grievous and saving Gas Tank. So, obviously, he's going to go for the quick route and is quite dangerous, and in hand-to-hand, he's no slouch either. He's taken on Wookiees before, knocking them back and taking them down. He's gone against Mandalorians, actually beating them in hand-to-hand combat, with Mandalorians being some of the most highly trained warriors in the galaxy, which includes the likes of Red Guards. Red Guards training in every conceivable form of martial arts and combat known throughout the galaxy. He's able to take on Mandalorians and even displayed in Attack of the Clones that he could take on the most famous of them, Jango Fett. Jango Fett being a Mandalorian that, while unarmed, was able to take down half a dozen Jedi and beat the shit out of them. Now, he actually was able to go toe-to-toe with Fett in this battle, who was also using his ship and all of his gear, and even land several blows on him. He also was able to land hits on Anakin Skywalker, knocking him back several times throughout their battle on Mustafar. And overall, when you're looking at someone like Kenobi, he is one of the most skilled duelists pound for pound we've ever seen, with his defensive prowess being unlike any other, with Dooku noting he's probably the best Risu master he's ever seen, and Mace Windu saying he was the ultimate practitioner of this style. On top of this, his martial arts prowess is renowned, as he's able to take on some of the best fighters in the verse, including Mandalorians, and even beat them. And he was one of the most intelligent Jedi generals in the Clone Wars, earning the nickname a negotiator, and even outpacing and outthinking the Chosen One himself. Overall, he is one of the scariest duelists and martial artists on the Jedi side to ever live, and Kenobi is only more dangerous in his exile form. Now we need to get on to hacks, abilities, and gear. Obi Wan Kenobi was always a Jedi well connected to the Force. He grew up as well under a character nicknamed the Maverick for being a pioneer in the Force, right? Qui-Gon Jinn. And fully immersing himself in the Force and trusting this all-encompassing power to guide him in combat. This forged a Jedi Master well adept in destroying his opposition with the Force if needed be. His precog was well attuned and well versed. He could see both the long-term ramifications of a battle and the short-term. For example, he could see what Anakin was going to be doing and anticipate this, as well as he could look into the Force in the future and see he was not dictated to win the battle through the Force. However, he pushed on anyways, which you kind of can argue resistance to fate, but that won't really apply here in combat, at least in an inverse and whatnot. His precog was top-notch, as well as his ability to conceal himself in the Force. He was able to walk around the Death Star even as an old man out of practice and hide himself until he wanted to finally be sensed by Vader, which is very impressive. His abilities in the Force were always insane. For example, he could keep up with Force telekinetic pushes with the likes of Kit Fisto and Mace Windu. He was able to match a raging Anakin on Mustafar in a Force push and neutralized it, sending both of them flying back. He is well versed at using the Force on the environment around him. For example, he can drop thousands of pounds worth of machinery on other characters, and manipulate things around him to fly at his foes. His regular Force pushes are quite formidable as well. When he was exiled and in the deserts, he actually was so brutal and well-tuned with his Force pushes that when combating Ashrat Het and getting annoyed by being struck by him, he lashed out with a nasty Force push that literally delimbed Ashrat Het, knocking away his prosthetic, which is pretty impressive. That's like imagining Luke Skywalker getting thrown so bad and his metal arm flying off, or Anakin, vice versa. It'd be ridiculous. In terms of like Force crushing actual people, he never showed a propensity for that. However, his Force crush of items and environmental damage is quite formidable. He has the ability called Mechaduru, where if you have any kind of metal or technology on you, he can manipulate it on a subatomic level. He even demonstrated this mid-combat against Anakin on Mustafar to loosen the grip in his arm and fuck with the metal arm of Anakin, forcing him to release Kenobi, which is pretty damn impressive. He can use Jedi Mind Trick as well to manipulate opponents. And it's well known he uses a high degree of Force physical augmentation, allowing him to combat the Chosen One, who is the most gifted Jedi ever, and keep up with Grievous, who's faster than any Jedi ever, which is quite impressive. Overall, his hacks are quite diverse, providing a better offensive range than people typically give him credit for, and allow him to be quite dangerous in combat. He also is well attuned in telepathic warfare and defending himself, as he was able to defend his mind while weakened against a dark side nexus that was likened to 100 Darth Mauls in power. His gear is limited to his regular robes and tunic, which provides little to no defense, as well as his lightsaber, which is high grade, with a pure kyber crystal that has served him well throughout his many battles. But overall, his abilities and gear are well versed and well suited for his style and make him one of the most formidable masters ever. Overall, Exile Kenobi is an absolute beast, one of the most defensively sound fighters we've ever seen, one of the most prolific Jedi generals to ever exist, and one of the most famous for a good reason. And with that, we're going to pan over and cover Luke Skywalker Dark Empire. Born hidden from his true father, who had become the Dark Lord Darth Vader, son of the scorned and evil chosen one, Luke Skywalker would grow up with two strangers raising him as their own on the planet of Tatooine, serving as a farmhand on Tatooine, but always hoping and secretly knowing he was destined for more. Eventually, he would run into a hermit, revealing himself to be Ben Kenobi, who Luke would later learn is one of the most famous Jedi to ever live, former Jedi General Obi Wan Kenobi. However, learning that his father had been once perhaps the greatest Jedi ever, Luke would go out to earn the family name and make his father proud, going against the Empire and battling the likes of the Dark Lord, Darth Sidious, and his evil, mighty fist, Darth Vader. Now, in a big collision between the two, Luke would learn from Darth Vader that his father had fallen to the dark side, disgraced himself and everyone, and became Darth Vader. In which Luke, realizing this, then sought out to right this wrong and save the galaxy by defeating his father, but not giving in to the dark side. After facing his father one-on-one above Endor, he was able to defeat him, and instead of giving in to rage and slaying him, he allowed him to live. Nearly being killed by Sidious, Luke was saved by Vader, who, with his last dying move, picked up Sidious and threw him into the engine, saving his son but dying in the process. Luke would later on grow up to try to help restitch the galaxy and Republic together. However, eventually Sidious would return, not being denied his evil throne, and that would start the Dark Empire era. Seeking to take him down, he was subjected to the rule of Sidious, even serving under him for a time. Eventually, with the help of his sister Leia, Luke would lash out and go out toe-to-toe against Sidious, eventually taking him down and defeating him. With his origins out of the way and story up through Dark Empire, let's go over his physicals. Now, a former farm boy. As a farm boy, Luke was very accustomed to the rugged lifestyle of hard work and perseverance in the outdoors, especially given that he was raised even before he knew he was a high tier force sensitive. He was raised in an environment with two suns, so the fact that he had double the exposure, it's just a much harsher environment which he endured and prospered in. Later on, after learning from Kenobi that he had a Jedi lineage and he would learn the ways of the Jedi, he showed that through force augmentation and development of his own, getting older, Luke was no joke in the physical department. Luke, even at a young age, was able to stand toe-to-toe with Darth Vader, one of the pound-for-pound strongest duelists and combatants in Star Wars. Given that he's considered to be stronger due to cybernetics as well than he was as Anakin, Anakin's strikes were likened and compared to that of small meteor strikes. And the fact Vader hits harder and Luke was able to hold him off even at a young age is pretty crazy. On top of this, His stamina has always been pretty good, never really been questionable. Given the fact that he grew up in such harsh conditions on Tatooine doing the type of labor he did, it makes sense that he already had a naturally very good gas tank. Undergoing rigid training with Yoda physically developed Luke to a heavy degree. He underwent intensive physical labor and use of force augmentation, including increasing drastically his balance, toughness, stamina, strength, and use of the force to help him push through physical detriments. On top of this, his speed increased drastically throughout the years as he became arguably one of the most impressive physically developing character traits in Star Wars is Luke Skywalker's. Like, he became drastically more deadly in just a short amount of time as a physical combatant. Luke was able to get so fast to the point that eventually he was just outright able to blitz Vader and surprise him. He was able to catch Boba Fett off guard, take him by surprise, and defeat him, at least for that period of time. He thought he killed him, but was able to put him down. Considering that Boba scales 2, if not outright above Jango, who can take on and disarm 6 Jedi Knights barehanded, it's pretty damn impressive to be able to speed blitz him. On top of this, Vader himself commended Luke as having insane potential as a Jedi, being one of the most physically imposing Jedi he's ever faced. His balance of speed and strength and stamina has made him always formidable to whoever he's fighting. Sidious confirmed in Dark Empire that he saw Luke as someone who would surpass Vader and would be much more formidable, and there's no doubt this was also a big factor due to his physicality. What I mean by that is Sidious had a fresh body that wasn't as torn up as Vader, wouldn't require as much maintenance and whatnot, was a lot more naturally gifted. This would allow for a physical juggernaut, as the Skywalker lineage allows for vast amounts of power to be used and still survive in the physical body and not destroy it. So Luke had insane potential physically, which at the point of Dark Empire, Sidious already saw him as being above Vader. And I think overall, his physicality and prowess in the physicals is akin to that of Vader with less drawback. He's significantly faster than Vader. Not as physically strong per se, but strong enough to easily combat Vader tiers. So yeah, I would say Luke, even in Dark Empire, is already one of the most physically annoying characters in Star Wars. Next, we're going to talk about his combat skills and intelligence. Now, similar to what I said about Kit Fisto and my Kit Fisto vs. Plo Koon, which, by the way, after this video, y'all should go check it out because that's an amazing battle in my opinion. I think there are certain characters in Star Wars that are insanely fun to analyze in the combat skill department and intelligence, and for me, Kit Fisto's up there, as well as the likes of Luke Skywalker, especially in the Dark Empire era and before that. So in terms of combat, obviously, Luke was very late to the game in terms of being exposed to the combative nature of being a Jedi. That is, he literally was not raised in the Force or in the ways of the Jedi at all until a late teen. At this point, he was provided the basics from Ben Kenobi, giving him a basic training in Chi-Cho. As I've explained before, Chi-Cho is the first form of lightsaber combat. This is the building block of all lightsaber forms, as it is typically used and established to comfortable with some of the basics of Chi-Cho, which obviously, like I said, is used to crowd control and to hold off those trying to get to you. It's not necessarily a dueling-based style. Luke became sort of a makeshift duelist after that. That is, he was a fighter that had to pick up on what he learned and what he was able to draw from. Eventually, he would have a notable duel with Darth Vader, Of course, I am referring to their first duel in which he lost. In this loss, however, this was vital to the growth of the combat skill and intelligence for Luke, because he was able to observe the prowess of Vader, as well as emulate and steal some of his moods and methodology and how he dueled. This allowed for Luke to formulate his own style based on Form 5. This is basically his interpretation of Form 5 at that point, which is a style Jimso / Chien, which is based out of a very strong base, a very powerful defense, followed up by dangerous, overwhelming retaliation and counterstrikes. So, having taken some of the moves observed from Vader, obviously has his time training with Yoda, in which he got to duel Vader again in the Dagobah Cave, being able to formulate this version of Vader out of the dark side of the Force, which he had already seen duel before, so he had a pretty good idea, and he was able to persevere and defeat him. We see Luke at this time really developing as a combative Jedi. For example, after this, we saw he was able to blitz characters like Boba Fett, who again have Jedi Knight to Jedi Master tier reaction time. Even if their weapons are malfunctioning, it should be really hard to get them. We saw even without weapons, like Jango Fett can easily hang with Jedi. On top of this, he was able to once again duel his father, in which Darth Vader had already admitted that Luke had an insane amount of potential as a duelist, as well as an overall threat as a Jedi who's already very powerful, on the way to becoming one of the most, if not the most, powerful Jedi ever. And when encountering his father for the last time in Return of the Jedi, in this duel, Luke showed a lot more of measured patience, which comes with the experience of heavy wins and losses he suffered throughout the rebellion. This is a Luke that saw plenty of friends die, saw ships fall, saw whole cities fall, saw planets destroyed. All because the rebellion wasn't strong enough and the Empire was overwhelming. This kind of humbled Luke, as well as losing to Vader for the first time, and we see a much more balanced and nuanced duelist. This is a Luke who has cemented his own variation of Form 1 and Form 5, kind of blended it together, making him a very unorthodox style of duelist. By Return of the Jedi, I would liken his style to an even more raw Kit Fisto with the defensive and patience and balance of a Vader type. He's not as nuanced as Vader. So I would say something more like the lines of Plo Koon, not nearly as overwhelming in his defensive stance, and not as technical as Plo, but again, he's taken a lot of moves from Vader, a lot of studying on his own, studying initially with Kenobi and then studying with Yoda. He has a weird system of fighting that allows him to overwhelm a lot of foes, including when he got pissed off, being able to eventually overwhelm Vader himself and defeat him outright in a duel. He also has plenty of experience against nuanced duelists. For example, he battled against Vader multiple times, including fighting a projection of him, and was able to overcome him, including his style, which includes both heavy skill-based dueling, physical dominance, and prowess with the Force, as Vader is well known for incorporating the Force with his dueling style, and Luke in their final battle showed he was easily able to overcome this, showing he is vastly capable of adapting on the spot and later on. After defeating Vader, he was able to duel against Sidious in Dark Empire, when Sidious himself was not overwhelming with power. When it came to just raw power and presence, Luke at that time was not enough on his own to overcome Sidious. However, when it was kind of stats equalized with Force Harmony and Leia, he was able to duel him no problem, even showing he had become much more developed in his style and was even going as so far as force pushing Sidious, showing he had even stolen some of his father's style of incorporating the environment in his dueling prowess. Overall, if I was to label Luke as a certain type of duelist or combative character, I would say his style is based and influenced heavily upon the Rebellion styles of attacks, which is pot shots, cheap shots, quick hits, get in and out, be patient, pick your spots wisely so you don't cost yourself as much, which makes sense seeing how he handled Vader in their last duel. While he's not the most technically gifted, given that he simply just hasn't had much time and as much time to develop his styles as other duelists do, he is one of the most naturally gifted fighters to have ever picked up a blade. And this more than compensates for his raw technical ability, and he's able to intelligently blend his gifts and natural prowess with his current knowledge on dueling, which allows him to compensate and make him one of the most intimidating duelist, I would say, for his tier, because he's very unorthodox, even stronger than characters like a Kit Fisto. He might not be as good at Shicho, but he is random, powerful, and dangerous. I would say this guerrilla warfare style of dueling and combative ability, the fact that he's a capable brawler, all makes Luke Skywalker a very dangerous opponent in combat skill and intelligence. Finally, for his final category, we are going to go over hacks, abilities, and gear. In terms of hacks, abilities, and gear, this is again interesting when taking in terms and consideration Dark Empire Luke. Up through this point, same with the way his combat skills and intelligence went, Luke simply wasn't granted access to developing his abilities in the Force until a late teen. Despite that, he already, as a Skywalker, had one of the strongest Force potentials to ever exist, allowing him, even at a young age, to impress some of the most important figures throughout the timeline. For example, while he did not have a very sophisticated learning approach to the Force up at that point, we do know that Luke had a little bit of training under Ben Kenobi, was able to communicate through the Force with him as well, and would get time developing his control and concentration, as well as telekinesis, precog, and physical augmentation, with the likes of Yoda, obviously Grandmaster Yoda being one of the most sophisticated Force users the light side's ever had. Now, after this brief training, he also showed great resistance to the dark side and the Force when he battled Vader in the Dagobah Caves, and then he later showed off his resistances to the Force, his much more refined physical augmentation, his increased ability to counter Vader's style and environmental chaos, and overall was impressive enough against Vader that Palpatine was convinced easily Luke should surpass him in all aspects, which should include power as well. He also has an insane resistance to the Force, as he was shown tanking the lightning of Sidious for an extended period of time. Keep in mind, this lightning basically one-shot Windu. This lightning was way more potent than Dooku's. Dooku was able to kill Jedi Masters with his, like Thulm. Yet Luke, for several moments, took a constant barrage. And what's most insane about this moment is he naturally performed Tooth Menace at the beginning and resisted initially, but it was too much, and he wasn't trained in Tooth Menace. Now, he did survive this, showing Force healing as well, as he was able to survive and endure. And he overall survived that moment, moved on. And after moving on, we saw him get a lot more intelligent in the Force, as after the fall of the Emperor and Vader, he was able to access much more archives and databases about, and even holocrons about dueling in the ways of the Force, even dabbling in the likes of dark side techniques. However, he's most known for telekinesis, his telepathic prowess, his ability to connect to others in the Force and feel them, as he was able to even manipulate the emotions and sense the emotions of Vader, as well as connect in Force harmony with Leia herself. And overall, while he's not that crazy in terms of what he knows and can weaponize in the Force, We do know that Dark Empire Luke is a juggernaut in terms of raw power and potential, and was even able to force push the likes of Sidious. And even if you say, oh, he's using Force Harmony, well, the fact that Luke could even think and ponder to violating the Force defenses of Sidious, a much more powerful Sidious, is absolutely nuts. Not many characters would even attempt that, even if they did have a sleight of hand. It's just, you wouldn't see that. So overall, I would say he's raw in the Force, in his Force techniques, but he is very powerful and potent in what he knows. In terms of gear, it's pretty basic. He has little to no body armor, although it is a much better suit, in my opinion, in Dark Empire. It's supposed to be like a more regal and more quality Vader-type suit. He also has his cybernetic arm and his lightsaber, of course. Overall, wrapping up Hack's abilities and gear, Dark Empire Luke Skywalker is one of the most capable duelists and combatants in Star Wars. Is a threat to most in terms of just hacks and abilities alone, simply because he could be very overwhelming. And although measured in nature, if he chooses to use his abilities, watch out, because he can start ragdolling people. Anyways, that wraps up Dark Empire Luke Skywalker, one of the most formidable characters in Star Wars. However, will this matter, as he's too facing one of the most formidable characters to ever walk in Star Wars as well, in Exile Kenobi? We're going to go over who wins each category, and then we are going to get into who I believe would win and how the battle would go. Make sure to run the likes up and hit the like button and subscribe if you haven't already. But getting back into this, who takes the physicals? Well, in terms of gas tank, I think both are relative, but Kenobi has more demonstrations of durability and toughness. In terms of speed, I do think Luke is actually faster, given he can outright blitz Vader, but in terms of reaction speed, Kenobi is more than capable of keeping up with Luke. In terms of strength, Luke was able to beat down the defenses of Vader. I don't believe Kenobi would ever have the strength to do so. I do think Luke is actually a little stronger physically than Kenobi, which makes sense given his father was stated to be the most physically gifted Jedi of all time. And in terms of toughness, I gotta give it to Kenobi. Even though Luke's tough as shit, even in his early days, I mean, he got his arm chopped off and still had the wherewithal to jump off and escape Vader. We've seen Kenobi endure weeks to months of torture, force lightning, lightsaber strikes, brutality, torture, all these things he's dealt with and overcome. I would say he's tougher. Overall, who would I give it to in terms of the physical department? I think Luke is a more natural athlete and gifted athlete. However, Kenobi's more proven in things like durability and even endurance. As a result, I would probably call this a tie. But the toughness of Kenobi cannot be overlooked. Just like the sometimes fluctuated speed of Skywalker cannot be overlooked as well. Now, if we are talking in terms of combat skill and intelligence, this is interesting. In terms of outright skill in combat, I believe Kenobi takes the edge. I mean, he's a much more seasoned vet in his learning of the different styles of the blade. He has way more practice with the blade, has dueled some of the best his era has ever produced, as well as some of the best the Council has ever produced. Whereas Luke, although very impressive, is more of a fighter than he is a technically skilled fighter. He's like a brawler. However, he's still a very dangerous brawler, capable of keeping up with high-tier duelists due to his blended fighting style. Now, in terms of intelligence, I also think Kenobi takes the edge. Obi Wan Kenobi is one of the most esteemed Jedi generals to ever exist. Outpaced Anakin Skywalker, rarely makes mistakes in combat. Even Dooku and Grievous respect his prowess as a general and combative warrior in nature, intelligence, and skill. So overall, I would give the edge to Obi Wan Kenobi. Now, in terms of hacks, abilities, and gear, we see that Kenobi is a very measured user of the Force. He's able to match the Force push of Anakin Skywalker when battling him on Mustafar. He's able to throw Grievous, whereas most Jedi can't even tag Grievous with the Force. He's able to read the minds of others and use Jedi trick. All this. He's a very proven, trusted user of the Force with several abilities. However, in hacks and abilities, I do believe Luke takes the edge, as he doesn't have as much technical training in the Force as Kenobi does. He has a much stronger natural connection, in my opinion, and is much more willing to learn in the Force than Anakin ever was, which allows Luke to capitalize much faster on his raw power and potential. And his prowess in combat with his hacks and abilities are proven as well. He's an exceptional user of the Force in combat already, which is very impressive for someone who hasn't studied that long. So for hacks, abilities, and gear, I actually would give the edge to Luke. He also has better body armor. So if these two were to clash, these two monsters in the Star Wars verse, how do I think it would go? Well, in the way they would start off the duel, due to his measured, powered approach, I do think Luke would initiate the first bit of lightsaber dueling, Kenobi comfortably countering. I don't think Kenobi at that point would do anything right away, because a lot of people we've seen Kenobi right away take down people. For example, when he fought Maul. However, I don't see this to be the case with Luke, as Luke would not be reckless in his approach to Kenobi and their duel. They would go back and forth. However, Luke would soon come to find that he cannot blitz through the defenses of Kenobi. Simply put, blitzing through the defensive prowess of Kenobi is almost impossible for any duelist. Luke would be no exception at this point, not really being able to get through with the blade. However, as they go back and forth with both exchanging blows, eventually Luke is going to blend in the Force. And at this point, I think Kenobi's in trouble. While Kenobi is the more superior duelist, at this point, once Luke starts mixing in Force pushes and pulls, he's going to be too much and will be able to ragdoll Kenobi. Kenobi's style, defensively in the Force, unless he knows how you use the Force, specifically what kind of style you are in the fight, like with Anakin. He knows when Anakin's going to load up a Force push, so he can counter that. His style is based on the blade, and so his defenses can get caught lacking. For example, Dooku was able to catch him lacking, throw him around. Maul did it as well several times. I see this being easily able to be done by Luke, who, with Force Harmony, was able to push Dark Empire Sidious, which I don't think Kenobi could ever do. As well as he can match the Force and is comfortable against Vader, and even naturally resisted Return of the Jedi Sidious's killing lightning. At this point, I think mixing in Force attacks, Luke would be able to eventually break through the defenses of Kenobi, and with high diff, I see him taking down Exile Kenobi. But anyways, guys, thank you so much for watching. Let me know who you think wins in the comment section down below. Do you believe Kenobi would take him down? Or do you think I was right and that Dark Empire Luke wins? Let me know. I had a ton of fun making this. This was a super competitive matchup. And if you're looking forward to the next Star Wars Versus series battle, smash the like button. Anyways, it's been your boy, Jobbers and Goons, and I'll see y'all later. Peace.